Alright, so once again we're using the Align 3GX fly barless system, which is a pretty good system. I'm more of a Beast X kind of guy. I love the micro Beast X, but I will tell you this: 3G users, go out and get yourself a 3GX because it surpasses the 3G by miles. And when I compare anything, in all honesty, I'm a 3D flyer, so I mean 3D when I compare stuff. So Beast X compared to 3GX are pretty close in 3D maneuvers, but I still think the Beast X beats it, and that's my opinion. Everybody's got their own. But the 3GX compared to the 3G, it's almost something funny. It's just far easier to use, a lot less sensitivity with that extra sensor and all that. So 3GX is good. Anyways, let's get back into the gyro setup here. So of course, same as the gp780, to get into our gyro here, basically I'm going to do the initial setup first, then we'll go back and do all the other stuff like your directions and all that stuff. So hold down the set button until you see the light turn green. Okay, and of course we're going to want a digital servo, so we can press the set button. Or actually, that first one was for a 1520 pulse rate servo, sorry. Digital servo. I've got my direction reversed. Once again, I've already done the setup, so I can leave that. Okay, so when we click on limit, here's an important thing. You'll notice the light's green, and then there's a solid red one. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to hold our rudder stick to the left, and go all the way over until it binds. Now I can hear binding, so now I'm just going to back it off just a little bit until it stops. Okay? Now if I run over here real quick, notice it flashed. Okay, the light's flashing. So now we're going to come back over here and move to the right, all the way over until it binds, and back it off just a hair. Okay, now come over here, the light did the little song and dance again. Now we're going to push the set button. Last setting is for size of helicopter, and then delay. We don't want any delay, so leave your stick at center. And of course green, because I'm using a 600. And then bam, gyro setup. Of course, go back in and make sure your gyro direction is spot on. So either normal or reverse on the gyro direction. And then the only other thing left to really talk about is going to be, make sure we don't got any binding in the rotor, that's important. Is going to be setting up the gyro gain. And so we'll get into that as well. Alright, let's do a quick recap on what gyro gain is and how it works. So, most radios, I'm using a DX8 for this heli. I'm more of a DX7 kind of guy. This heli does not belong to me. This belongs to a good friend of mine. But most programmable transmitters have a gyro menu. So, I'm going to scroll down here to my gyro. And you'll notice I've got a couple different settings here. So basically, on a DX8, it differs from a DX7. So if this video confuses a lot of you out there, just post something, and maybe I'll make a DX7 gyro gain video or something. But for right now, I'm going to use a DX8 to kind of explain it to you. A lot of people have them nowadays. So basically, from 0 to -100 is going to be your rate mode setup. And then from 0 to +100 is your gyro gain. So this radio made it nice because it kind of eliminated that true gain factor, whereas on a DX7, from 50 to 100 is your positive, and from 50 to 0 is your negative. See, so if I'm running a 63 on a DX7, does not mean I have 63% gain. That means I'm probably in the ballpark of, I don't know, 28 to 31 or something like that. That's called your true gain. But the DX8 made it nice to where it eliminated that factor. So for my stock setup, usually I just set my rate to a -30. I never really fly in rate mode. I just use it to reset the gyro before I take off, or if I move the heli. You'll see the little thing move. In my position 1, I always set it to about a 30%. I actually fine-tuned it to about 31. And it may need just a little bit more, a little less. You know, I haven't got this out and flying too much yet. You know, and this actually has a double switch option, so I set them both to the same in case I accidentally bump it or something. I got the same gain. Or a good tip is you could set this to 31 and this one to 32. Go out and fly it. If you don't have enough here, kick it up to here. If that feels good, you can come back and set them both. Just a good way to toggle between gyro gains without landing and making any changes. But basically, when you're setting your gyro gain, I usually set it to about 30 on a DX8, and take it out for my first test hover. And basically what you want to look for is you have your two different factors. You have tail wag, and then you have what I call chasing the tail. Basically chasing the tail, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up into a hover, okay, and you're going to want to put it into a pirouette. Just let it spin maybe one time, two times if you're comfortable. For those of you who are still hovering, maybe just jerk the tail back and forth. You want to make sure you really jerk the tail because that's going to give you the best gyro readings. So basically, you're going to want to put it into a pirouette or jerk the tail. Okay. So definition of chasing the tail. If I put the tail into a pirouette and I stop it, I let go of the rudder, and it kind of bounces or it feels, you know, really soft. You get some back and forth action going on there. It doesn't lock, it doesn't snap into place. That's basically chasing the tail. You're chasing it to stop where it should. So you know, in translation, if I just did a pirouette and I'm supposed to stop right here, so the heli did a turn, it's supposed to stop here. When you're chasing the tail, it'll kind of do this and then stop. And don't confuse that with tail wag, okay? So tail wag is gonna be when your tail is, I mean, basically that. If I'm in a hover right now and my tail's wagging like this, that's tail wag. In a pirouette, it's gonna wag. Chasing the tail is more of a side-to-side sway or a bounce. And basically, when you're chasing the tail, your gain is too low. You don't have enough lock to keep that tail solid. On the flip side, tail wag is going to be due to gyro gain is up too high and other factors. So the key to it is I start with that medium setting, which most gyros are going to operate between, I don't know, let's say 29 and like a 33% gain. I very rarely I think I've ever used a gyro that was above that, but I'm sure they're out there and they exist. So I start with that medium setting around 30%, and I take it out, you know. So if I feel like I'm chasing the tail, I bump it up 1 to 2 clicks at a time. You don't want to just jump it up. But the best way to do it is to find your max gain to where you start to wag, and then take it down a couple clicks to where you're locked perfect. And you got to get it out and fly it. You can't just hover it and say, okay, we're good. I mean, you got to be able to turn it. If you can't 3D fly, that's fine, but you want to stress the tail a little bit with pirouettes and fast stops on the rudder to make sure your gain's locked in all aspects. So make sure you do that. If you're still getting a wag problem afterwards, which that's one of the biggest problems with the gp780, there are some other things that we can go over. Once again, blade tracking. Make sure your blades are balanced. I use a digital scale. I don't use the teeter-totter method. If your blades weigh exactly the same, then all you got to worry about is tracking. Once again, your mechanical setup, make sure it's nice and smooth. And then one of the other big things I see is the mounting of the gyro. It's not a matter of playing with different mounting tapes and combinations. It's just making sure it's mounted solid. And one thing I always see happen is I do what's called I call it a service loop. A lot of people, when they're mounting their gyro, and of course with the 3GX it's a little different. It's hard mounted, so you don't got to worry about it with as much. But Alliance older spongy tape, you know, has some play in it. So yeah, you can strap the gyro down, but a lot of people, they'll strap these wires down like this, and when that happens and you vibrate, it shakes your gyro. Let your wires be nice and free, especially your gyro gain wires. You want them to be free enough to where if they vibrate the wire, not the pin or the unit. A lot of people strap those wires down, and it really does make a difference. Leave that little bit of a service loop to where you got some freedom in your wires. You know, so just to conclude it, guys, make sure, you know, like I said, mechanical setup is done, programmable setup is done. If you're getting vibrations or wag afterwards, it's going to be due to vibrations, so you got to go back and check your work. Blade tracking, blade balancing, the tightness of your blades, make sure you have no screws loose, make sure there's no up and down play in the head, because if one of these shim spacers are missing, you get that up and down play, it can cause all kinds of problems. Check your gears, just really double check everything. But if you do a good solid build and all the mechanics are done right and the programming's done right, I promise you the gp780 works really well. And I will be putting up a flight demo video of this bad boy here pretty soon to prove it to you. So I think that should do it for us. Let me know if this video was helpful to you, sorry. And if you got any other videos, go ahead and shoot me some posts. And remember, guys, if Freddy can fly, so can you. Thanks.